at 22 years old, I called Art and I said, hey, I'm ready to plant a church. Sign me up. Even though I was 22, I had a huge school loan, I was single, I had no theological training. I had none of the things that you really need to start a church. Really spoke life over me and encouraged me to wait a little bit. Over the years, it just became clear, like there's nothing else that I could do besides this.
Welcome to the Believe Again podcast, powered by Parable. I am your host, Josh Robry. The Believe Again podcast seeks to inspire, equip, and challenge church planners through stories of grit and thought-provoking conversations on faith and leadership. After writing a book called Believe Again, Finding Faith After Losing Religion, and helping hundreds of pastors start new churches through my role at the Association of Related Churches, I wanted to take my favorite part about both of those journeys and bring it to a podcast, and that is having conversations with people that challenge us to become more like Christ, to lead in a more Christ-like way, and inspire us to keep going when we want to give up. And that's exactly what we're going to have today in our conversation with Noah Herrin. Noah and his wife Maddy recently planted Way Church in Nashville, Tennessee. You might have heard of Noah. He had a successful young adult ministry that led to him having a ministry of traveling around as an evangelist, speaking to youth, young adults on Sunday mornings, to many churches, helping them lead people to Christ and seeing people set on fire for God. Over the past couple years, they've been working with me at ARC to start Way Church, and I've been so inspired by Noah, his grit, his determination, his vision, and leadership. He's truly a special person, but what I enjoy most about Noah is that he's a deep person. And so you're going to discover that today as we talk about his church planting journey in Nashville. So it's a great story. If you plan on planting a church one day, or you're a person in leadership and you're looking for some principles to help you out, I know Noah's story is going to do just that. So we're going to jump into that interview right now. Thank you so much for being on this episode with me today. What's new in Nashville?
Oh man, I am going to the Cheesecake Factory tonight to celebrate a birthday. The fall weather is here. College football is on the television. Nashville is in its prime right now.
Noah, you post something on social media every day, and I thought it'd be good just to kick off this podcast episode with that phrase. What is that phrase? Where'd it come from? And what does it mean to you?
Yeah, I post gonna be the best day ever. And it's just a reminder to me, first thing in the morning, that I get to choose what the day is going to be like. And it really is me speaking to myself more than to anybody else, but I post it as kind of like a daily accountability. I wrestled with some depression and just not really having a positive mindset early in my 20s. And God was working on my heart, and I was learning to experience the joy of the Lord for myself. And that was just something that I started doing when I was wrestling with that. And I've been posting it every day now for almost 6 years. So
wow, 6 years.
It's been going for a long time. It really has helped me just at the beginning of every day, just remind myself, like, I might not have some crazy thing scheduled today that's I'm super looking forward to, but I can find joy in the small moments and kind of practice gratitude.
I think it's something that's challenged me since I've known you to remind myself of that. Sometimes in our day, we just have to pause for a second and realize, hey, I get to choose what my reaction is. We don't get to choose what happens to us, but we get to choose our response. And that phrase of yours, when I see it posted on social media, it always reminds me of that. So I'm very grateful that you do that. And if I've learned anything from being around you and Maddy, is that you guys have a lot going on and you're always busy doing something. Where does that come from?
Yeah, I think we both get energy from being around people. My wife is more extroverted than I am. I would say I'm somewhere in the middle. I would say I come up with a new idea on a daily basis. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea or one that we should explore, but that's just kind of my personality of like, oh, we should do this. And then before we've thought about what we have to say no to in order to say yes to that thing, I've already built it out and posted an episode. That's just kind of how I'm wired, and we're a good balance because Maddy brings wisdom to that equation. We just love people. We love going for it. We love taking risks, and if there's a way to do all of it at one time, we're in on it most of the time.
Well, if there's one way to do all that at one time, that's to plant a church. And you guys just had a fantastic start to Way Church. How's the first couple of weeks going of not only being a church planner, but now senior pastor Noah Herrin?
Hmm. Yeah, that's the weirdest part of all of it for sure. There's people in our church who are literally double my age calling me Pastor Noah, and it feels so weird. I'm like, I appreciate it, but you can just you just call me Noah. But it's been going amazing. We've had 56 people give their life to Jesus for the first time. This Sunday, we're doing baptisms for the first time. We've got over 20 people who've signed up to be baptized so far. It's been a blast. Our church is a mile and a half from downtown Nashville, and we're seeing all sorts of people come and find community and get plugged in. We just did our version of a growth track. We call it Way Track. And we did that this past week for the first time. 51 people went through it. And out of 51 people, 47 of them signed up to serve. So we're just fired up right now. It's a lot of momentum, a lot of exciting things happening, and really just really grateful after years of dreaming about this to finally have it up and off the ground, and feeling like, hey, we're pivoting and learning on the fly, but we feel really prepared as well because of the training that we had from you guys at ARC, and just the people that are in our corner that are giving us advice. It's been really great, and we're just enjoying the ride.
Well, you said after years of dreaming and planning to finally be there. So let's go back to that place where you were first dreaming and planning of doing this one day. How did you
Yeah.
know that you would be planning a church one day?
So I was being mentored by a church planter. When I was 22 years old, I was leading a college ministry, and I asked him at coffee one day, I said, "Why did you decide to plant a church?" And he said this line that it's just stuck with me ever since. He was like, "Church planters are the Navy SEALs of the kingdom of God."
You were in after that.
Oh, I was in. I wanted to be a Navy SEAL so bad, but I wasn't tough enough. So I was like, maybe I could do it in the kingdom of God. So, um, anyways, it just stuck with me. And there was something exhilarating about watching him do it when he was mentoring me. He was in his early 30s at the time. It just was exhilarating. And then the more I prayed about it and the more I thought about it, I just thought, man, this is not just something that is exciting to me. I think I might actually have the skill set for it, and just kind of the build for it. As we already talked about, I love building. I love starting things from scratch, and it's definitely a part of the church planning process. I started seeking wise counsel from people. In fact, when I was 22, that same year, I heard from multiple people that I should call ARC if I wanted to plant a church. So at 22 years old, I called ARC and I said, "Hey, I'm ready to plant a church. Sign me up." And the guy who answered the phone was none other than Jeff Wells, who was so kind to me. And he didn't discourage me, even though I was 22. I had a huge school loan. I was single. I had no theological training. I had none of the things that you really need to start a church. But Jeff was so kind, really spoke life over me, and encouraged me to wait a little bit. And I'm so glad I listened to him. But that's how it started. Was at 22 years old, just a seed being planted in my heart, feeling like, hey, I might be called to do this, and started seeking out wise counsel, people like ARC, people like mentors in my life who had planted churches. And over the years, it just became clear, like, there's nothing else that I could do besides this.
Well, I want you to know that you made Jeff Wells' day by mentioning his name on this podcast, because he's been listening and he tells me that he's a little jealous that I've mentioned Isaiah at the end of every episode. So now, Jeff, you're getting your time to shine. You were the one that brought us Noah Herrin. And also, Jeff was one of the first people to cultivate a relationship with Brad Hampton. If you don't know Jeff Wells, he works on staff here at ARC. And basically, he's become like a mentor and a father figure to so many church planners. It's really just an amazing thing to see how God's grown and used him in the process. I'm just a little jealous of Jeff that somehow you got his number instead of mine, but that's okay. So you were,
Yeah, I don't know.
how did that happen?
I really think that I must have just called during a busy time or something, because he was the person that answered the phone, and I just started word vomiting on him, and he was super gracious and kind and listened to me.
So you talked to Jeff on the phone, and Jeff said, "Hey, let's wait a little bit. So time goes on. Now you're thinking it's the season to plant. How did you choose
Yeah.
where you were going to go, and how did you know that it was now the right time?"
Yeah, we were wrestling with a few different cities. We talked to different church planners and kind of asked their process of how they chose a city. And one person that we talked to in particular, he had planted around the same age that we were going to be when we were planting, planted a really successful church. And I just said, "Hey, how did you decide on your city?" And he said, "Oh, that was easy. We just planted in the city that we loved the most." I was like, "Wait, like explain that, unpack that." And he said, "Well, we just thought if we plant in the city we love the most, we won't be tempted to leave when things get hard." And man, as soon as he said that, I just was like, that I resonate with that. Like, I want to go to the city I love the most. And I looked at my wife, Maddie, and she immediately looked at me and said Nashville. And it Nashville was our favorite city. We got married in 2019, and when we got married, it became the place that we would go on long weekends. We'd go for my birthday. Some of our best friends lived in Nashville, and so that was the city we loved the most. And as soon as we started praying and fasting about Nashville and heard that advice, it was just like, this is the place. We love it. We love the people here. We love the future of the city of Nashville, and we just felt like that love would allow us to minister to the city better. And ultimately, that was where the decision came from.
Yeah, that's a great way to pick your city. I think going somewhere you love that you have an affinity for. Also, I think a place where your testimony is going to resonate with people and where you'll be able to
Hmm.
get some natural traction. And earlier, you were mentioning about how you came to decide that you wanted to plant a church one day and how you had some of the skill set that would lead to being successful. And I don't know what inventory you took of yourself, to decide like, hey, this is why I think it would work. But a couple of things I noticed in you that I think maybe go unnoticed when people think about, hey, I might be a church planter one day. It's grit, it's an entrepreneurial spirit, and which comes with the ability to take risk, and with that grit matches hard work. And I think when I
Hmm.
think about you, and I think about someone who has an entrepreneurial mindset, has the grit to do hard work, that's more often than not what leads to success in church planting, a lot more than some of the flashier things that people may take notice of. They don't see
Hmm.
behind the scenes those other things that are going on. And then you said you love Nashville, but what I've noticed is that Nashville loves you back, which is another which is another important part of the journey. Is I think people say, hey, where do I want to live? But they never ask themselves, hey, does this city love me back? What told you that you had momentum once you got there?
Well, we felt like there were a lot of things about the city that aligns with us just as a family. It's a very young city. There's a lot of young families that have moved here. And so we thought, man, that's the season of life we're in. We have two little kids. We're hoping to have more in the future, Lord willing. And this is a very, very young city with lots of kids and lots of families. So we felt like that would allow us to connect with people a little bit more naturally. We also felt like it's a city of influence, and it's impacting culture in a way that's really unique, whether it's the music industry or a lot of Hollywood companies are moving here, film companies. Our background was college ministry, and there's four colleges here. There just were so many things that aligned, not just with things we care about, but past experience, even in ministry, that we felt like, man, this is a city that we love. But I think there's something to having that love, and then it also the city aligning with kind of who you are, and you're not having to strive outside of who you are. And so those two things combined made it an easy choice for us.
Yeah, that's key. I think just working out of who you are instead of having to strive to be something else to reach the people in your city would be a key
Hmm.
determining factor. Giving back is so important, and that's why Parable was the first organization I reached out to when I was looking for a sponsor for this podcast, because Greg and his team are people who care about ministry leaders and they give back. Greg, I don't know if you're even comfortable sharing some of that, but I'd love for you to maybe take a second and talk about how you've been able to use Parable to give back to pastors.
I mean, it all started when my wife and I were church planters. 6 years into the church plant, I was tired. I was working way too much. I was thinking I was the rescuer. And there was a couple that would give away. It wasn't anything super special, but it was like a little bit of an Airbnb in their house kind of thing that overlooked a little lake, and it was kind of a beautiful spot. And they would just gift it to pastors, and that was my wife and I and our young son at the time. It was our first break, and so When I stopped being a pastor and we started Parable, the first thing I wanted to do was be able to care for other pastors and their families so that they can stay in the game. Last year, I sat with 120 pastors over the course of the year in small groups of 10 to 20, basically pouring into them and being an encouragement, walking alongside them, and just loving them and praying for them.
Love your heart for pastors. And so if you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, or strategic services for your church, why not partner with someone who already believes in you and your mission before you even give $1 of business to them? Find out more at liveyourparable.com. Click on the Let's Chat button and enter the promo code BelieveAgain to get 25% off your onboarding services. I'm so happy to be joined with Craig Krozik, the president of Live Design Group. Craig, thank you so much for joining me for a conversation today.
Thank you, Josh.
So if someone is dreaming about a building project, what would you say are some first steps that they could take with Live Design?
The first step with us would be to contact us, and we can set up a free consultation with them to learn about their church, learn about their needs. If they have a piece of property or existing building in mind, you can get on Zoom call and Google Earth and help them determine what is the best first direction for them.
So they have a chance to find out if they're a good fit for you guys, if you're a good fit for them before even taking a first financial step with you.
Absolutely.
Whether you're in a space that needs to be updated or have a vision for a new project to reach more people in your community, Live Design Group can help. To learn more about Live Design Group, visit livedesigngroup.com or email Craig at craig@livedesigngroup.com. We'll get back to the conversation in just a moment, but before we do, I want to tell you about a new tool that's helping more new people come to church for the first time than anything I've ever seen before. It's called Visit Planner, and Visit Planner uses targeted digital advertisement and powerful engagement software to help introduce your church to new people. You can find out more by scheduling a demo at visitplanner.church and use the code VP20 to get 20% off your first month. That's V as in visit, P as in planner, 20 to get 20% off your first month. Now back to the show. So the name of the church is Way Church. Great name.
Yeah.
Where did that come from and what does it mean?
Yeah, in the book of Acts, the earliest form of the church wasn't called the church, it was called the way, and people were known for the way that they lived their life differently. It was, the upside down kingdom kind of idea of, instead of being all about me, I'm all about others. Instead of being about my kingdom, I'm about the kingdom of God's type of a deal. And when we were praying early on about what we wanted our church to look like in Nashville, who we wanted our church to be, a lot of the stuff we were saying just correlated with the earliest form of the church. And one day Maddy just looked at me and she's like, why don't we just call it Way Church? We keep saying, we keep referencing the way, let's just call it Way Church. And
wait, so Maddy came up with that?
Yeah, she did.
Oh,
if you want to edit
man.
this out, that would be great. She comes up with all the good ideas in our family, so it's not a surprise. But that's where it came from, and man, we love it for so many different reasons. It's short, it's to the point. There's so many different sayings that have really resonated with people. One of the ones that we say often is, where there was no way, there is one now. And where there was no Way Church in Nashville, there is one now. But where there was no way into heaven, there is one now through the person of Jesus. And so it's been a very natural conversation piece as we're talking to people, and they say, hey, what do you do? And we say, we started a church. And they're like, well, what's it called? And we say, Way Church. And then they're like, why'd you call it Way Church? And then it's like a boom, let me share the gospel with you. There was no way for us to have eternal life, but because of the sacrifice of Jesus, there's a way now. And that's why we called it Way Church. And it just gets us right to the point very quickly, which we've loved.
Yeah, I mean, what a brilliant name that it would not only be able to create a natural segue into telling the mission of the church, but also one into sharing the gospel. I mean, I think it's a brilliant name. When you think about it, it's like, how come no one thought of that before? This is what Christianity was originally called, the way. You guys figured that out, and I love that. It reminds me of a funny story with a church planner. We were doing a church planner training, and we're asking him to give his pitch. I said, hey, so tell us the name of your church and how you would invite someone. He goes, I wouldn't invite him to church. And we're like, what do you mean you wouldn't invite him to church? He says, I would just lead him to Christ right there. and then they'd want to come to church. I'm like, well, hey, well, let's just skip a few steps and just get right to it then.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
So you guys have figured out a way to do that. And I think, I'm trying to pull out some things that if someone's listening to this and wanting to plant a church one day, that
Yeah.
they could learn from. And one of them is, hey, pick a name where the mission and the vision of the church allows you to tell people about it naturally. If the name's too weird or complicated, I think sometimes people think standing out is a good thing. It's not always a good thing if you can't
Yeah.
do anything with that. So
Yeah.
way to
That's
go.
great.
Way church, no pun intended, right? Okay, so you guys planted Way Church. In the process of doing that, you had some really creative ways to build your team. I had the pleasure of being at your first vision night and seeing how that
Yeah.
went down in Parlor Donut. People were just coming out the door. There was standing room only. It was an amazing night. But from there, you took that crowd and began to do some creative things. So I'd love for you to share how you went about recruiting your team and maybe some things that y'all did a little differently.
Yeah, so even before we did our first interest gathering, the thing that we noticed in Nashville that people were craving more than anything is community. And so everything that we did prior to launch was all about giving people what they were craving, which was community. There's no one way to skin the cat of getting people to join the team. You could do it a million different ways. This way worked for us. Instead of going missional first to build community, we decided to build community and then take it missional. So we did that interest gathering, and really that was like, let's just get whoever wants to hear about the vision, we're going to get them there. We're going to have fun. It's going to be informative, and we'll share the vision. But even at the interest gathering, so much of it was about connecting with the people that were there. But what we were really after was the week after the interest gathering, we did this thing called dinner parties, where we had 4 dinner parties located at all different parts of the city. So no matter where you lived, there was one that was within 10, 15 minutes from your house. And at those dinner parties, Maddy, my wife and I, we would attend along with one of the main couples of our church that was helping us get the church off the ground. And at the first one, I think we had at each dinner party over 25 people at all 4 of them that next week. And basically, it's just a smaller group of people. You're able to connect. We had food at it. We had games planned out to play to get everyone involved and try to get to know the couples that were there on a deeper level. And then we spent another 15, 20 minutes just talking about, hey, you heard the big vision at the interest gathering, but here's what it's practically going to look like. This is what it takes to be on our launch team, and this is what the next 6 months are going to look like, and this is where we're eyeing for launch, and here's how you can take the next step. And that's where we did all of the real ground game, we called it, was at those dinner parties. And to this day, I mean, we look back, we launched with 128 launch team members. And out of 128 launch team members, I would say 80 to 90% of them came from those dinner parties because they just felt such buy-in community-wise to what we were doing. It was more than just a vision statement and a set of core values. It was like, no, like we know these people and like we like being a part of this group. Why would we not also care about this vision as well? And I'm really grateful for it. In fact, we're about to roll out community groups. And before the community groups actually happen, we're doing another round of dinner parties to get to know some of these new people who just gave their life to Jesus and attended Waytrack. So we're all in on the dinner parties.
Well, I thought it was a great idea. And it reminded me of one of the first 2 ARC church plants, ARC church plant number 1 and 1A and 1B. I don't know how they figured this out, but Chris Hodges and Rick Bezet. And one of the things that, Rick Bezet tells a story of is the fact that they would constantly have people over at their house for baked cookies. And Michelle Bezet would bake cookies. They would have people over, and it just provided this relational element in between those interest meetings. And Chris Hodges, Pastor Chris, talks about how he did a small group, but the only way you could come to the small group if you were already connected was to bring somebody, which is also a great way for people to keep people on mission, but also build community in the process. And I think you guys had a unique situation where your first meeting was bigger than most church plants get through the whole recruiting process. So you had to do some creative things to keep those people connected and engaged and moving forward because you didn't have a church yet. And so
Yeah.
to me, it's always interesting when someone's able to get that early momentum, what they do to keep things moving forward. And I thought that was a great idea. It felt just so organic. The early church, it just made me really want to come and be a part of y'all's church plant so I could experience it and be part of it. It'd just be just a 3.5 hour drive to each meeting. So
Small commute.
yeah, small commute. And I would, I don't know what team, I think I might serve on the parking team. I'm trying to think where my strengths would lie. I think I could do that. Okay, so we talked about the fact that you guys had so much early momentum, that things got off the ground quickly. But what are some challenges that you had, or maybe a challenge you had in the process of getting Way Church off the ground?
Yeah, immediately the first thing that comes to mind was our age. We're pretty young, but that was a challenge, not because we didn't feel like it was the right time. We felt for sure like God's called us to this, and we know that there are things we need to learn, and we're going to need the support of some spiritual moms and dads for this to happen. But I think from the beginning, that was a challenge externally, trying to raise money. Felt like there were a lot of people who were like, hey, we believe in you guys, but like you guys have never had to handle this much money in your life before. Like, what's your plan for that? Whereas maybe someone a little bit older with more ministry experience, with more financial experience, there would have been more natural trust. So we had to do a really good job of showing people, hey, this is what our oversight looks like. It's not just us that's making these decisions. This is what our financial plan looks like, our budget, our fundraising plan. These are the other churches that have agreed to partner with us. That showed a lot of validity to what we were doing. We just needed to make sure that, especially on the money side and the oversight side, that the people that we were raising funds from and the people who were coming to these interest gatherings that were not in their 20s and 30s, that they felt really good about that piece of it. We had several business owners who came to the initial interest gatherings, and they wanted to know. They were like, where's my tithe money going to go if I start giving? What does the budget breakdown look like? And all these different things. And I remember the first couple of times those conversations happened, I was really insecure about it. But the moment I kind of flipped my perspective and saw, no, like they just want to make sure that they're investing in something that they're going to get an ROI on. It really inspired and motivated us to just be as exceptional as we could with that communication and that plan. I think also just the age thing, we attracted and we still are attracting a lot of young people. I'd say this past week we had 416 people come this past Sunday, and I would guess that somewhere around 300 to 325 of them are under the age of 35. And so we're attracting a lot of young people, which is super exciting, but we need spiritual moms and dads. And so constantly we're asking the question, how can we get the spiritual moms and dads of our church on the stage? How can we get them to be the ones that are casting vision to their friends and their peers and people who have the life experience that we don't have, but we desperately need to be a part of our church? Those things, I think, will be a part of the challenge from this point forward, that have been to this point in the journey. But it's a blast to figure out, and God's been sending these couples as well. We're growing each and every week, that group of people, and our heart is to have a multi-generational church. But that's been a challenge from the beginning, is if you have 400 people but 300 of them are under the age of 35, that affects things financially too. A 400 person church with an average age of 40 is going to be able to afford a lot more space, afford a lot more equipment, afford a lot more to give away in ministry than a church with the average age of 28. So that's been a big challenge for us.
Well, that's an interesting challenge to have to face. And I think watching you guys, even from, the beginning really, and your social media and how you presented yourself, you are younger. But I noticed, like, you use your social media, you'll post someone with some gray hair. You'll make that the first slide in your Instagram post. And then at your launch service, you had, they're not old to me. They're like my age, maybe a little bit older, but an older couple get up and transition at the end of the service, which I thought was interesting. And I think whatever your weakness is, you can cater to that by having someone with that strength come up. And I'm using that word strength in a very vague way. I was at another launch this weekend where the couple was in their 40s and their news video was someone in their 20s. Well, that just makes sense.
Yeah.
But if you're in your 20s and you got someone in your 20s doing the video, you're probably missing it.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank my guest, Noah Herrin, for joining me today. You can find Noah on Instagram at Noah Herrin. He is a great follow on Instagram as he creates amazing content that I know you're going to enjoy. Noah also has a book out, Holy Habits, 10 Small Decisions That Lead to a Big Life. You can find it on Amazon and wherever books are sold. I'd also like to thank our sponsors. Parable helps you place every dollar on mission by providing church accounting, bookkeeping, and strategic services so you can tell the most incredible story of all, his story, even with your church's money. Go to liveyourparable.com and click Let's Chat. See how Parable can help you stay focused on the mission. Get 25% off your onboarding fees when you enter the promo code Believe Again. And if you're a church planner, Parable will actually give you 9 months of free accounting services leading up to your launch day after you pay those onboarding fees. So go check them out. Live Design Group is also a great partner of the show, and they are an architectural and interior design firm working with growing organizations focused on creating places that bring people together. Their highly interactive live design process lets you explore your options as the design evolves in real time. You can schedule your free consultation at livedesigngroup.com, or you can email Craig at livedesigngroup.com to start that conversation. And finally, I want to thank Yellowbox, who built the Believe Again website and created the Believe Again brand. I want to thank Isaiah Duncan for helping me run this podcast each week. And I also want to say, as a podcast, it's huge when we can get reviews and subscriptions. So if you wouldn't mind going on YouTube and subscribing to the show there, and wherever you listen to a podcast, go on there and give us a 5-star review. It would mean so much. And thank you for doing that. I'm so glad you're with us today, and I can't wait for you to join us next time.